All right, here we are. Jordan Shipman, Kids Program Director. Took over Kids Program Director in January 2023. And Brown Belt in Jiu-Jitsu and former General Manager of Longmont. Also, longtime just student at Easton. I've known Jordan for a long time because, man, I was just around when he first joined. Anyway, we're going to jump in with a bunch of questions today. Jordan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Yeah, life is good. I'm having a good morning.
All right, so this style I've been doing is less conversational, but we'll see where it goes. I just have a lot of questions I like to ask and see what we get out of you. A lot of you like jiu-jitsu and Easton based. Then we're going to pivot to more kind of obscure questions, and then we'll have a nice closing if we have time.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, let's jump right in. How was your transition from GM to program director?
Man, the transition. I think the best way that I could describe that transition was like the shedding of a skin. I think that wearing that GM identity was becoming like very constricting for me personally. And I was really excited to transition into this role. And so, I went through this process of letting go and handing the keys to the ship over to somebody else. And, after building the Longmont school from the ground up, going through the COVID pandemic and everything like that, you become really attached to that. And handing the keys over to somebody else, there was like this process of shedding an old identity. It's like, no, this is not my role anymore. I need to think about things differently, approach things differently, and make sure that I'm getting out of the way for the next person, to take over and lead the ship. So there was that piece of it. And then the other piece of the transition, I think, was really just a learning phase, was just kind of like learning how to do my job. I think it took a while. And officially, I had the title for Kids Program Director in January of 2023. But I would argue that it didn't really officially start until April 1st, 2023, just because when I was simultaneously still wearing the general manager hat and the Kids Program Director hat at the same time, I felt like I had a foot in both worlds, and both worlds were a little half-baked for me because I just could not execute fully on either role, having both of those responsibilities at the same time. So once April 1st hit and Professor Phil Leitz was officially the GM in Longmont, that's when I felt like I was really able to sink my teeth into the job and really figure things out. And I would say it was about 6 months of getting into the groove. And I think part of the reason it took so long, because that sounds like a long time, we talk about the first 90 days a lot around Easton, and there was definitely an aspect to that, but it just takes some time to go around to all of the different schools, do some visits, see different classes, start building relationships with all of the different DHs. I had still have great relationships with all the GMs. So I didn't really need to build that part, formally being on the GM team. But building relationships with all the kids' DHs, getting to know them, getting to know the kids' staff, it took some time. And then it also took like more than one visit to really get a big picture view. And I think that was like the big piece of it, of why it took me a little while to really get the hang of like what to do in this role, was because it takes some time and some deliberate effort to really have that big picture view. I don't think I realized how myopic my perspective could be. As a general manager of the Easton Longmont Academy, you get really focused on that bubble and that school and the needs of that school. And it's hard. I think it's really difficult to keep the big picture in mind. And I think that it takes some deliberate effort where you really have to go to the other schools, spend some time there, and more than one visit, to get that zoomed out, elevated perspective, so you can kind of see where everybody is at. And then once you're able to see where everybody is at, then you're really more skillfully able to prioritize like what needs to be done first, right? So once I had that elevated perspective, then I felt like I was able to, sit down and create a map, goals for the program. And that's kind of where we're at now. That answer your question?
I got to prepare for your long explanation to like you make sure you touch on all the points. Everybody like has a different way to communicate.
I'm a monologuer.
Yeah. You and Phil Leitzar, you both. I can actually show up to have a conversation with you and like just get a drink of water and just sit back. It's like a movie. One question out, and I'm like, all right, here goes 5-10 minutes.
And then just let them talk.
Yeah, and I'll say one word, and then it goes whoop.
Yeah, it happens.
Well, okay, to continue down that line, I was curious, and you kind of started talking about this, like the myopic piece of being a GM versus seeing the different parts of it. For being someone that was a general manager, or someone that's been in a few different seats, helped create a bunch of the seats, right? I can definitely see all the different sides of it, and it definitely gives you a bigger picture view and more empathy for each position,
Sure.
Which is hard. I mean, maybe some people are more empathic than others. I'm not. I have to like kind of experience it to be like, oh, now I see, So in that regard, kind of, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how your view of the organization has changed, if at all, from the general manager position, or man, you could even go from the coach position in Boulder to general manager position to the PD position. Because a coach, you're like, you have a job to do, and it's a good job, and you're focused on all the students and making sure you teach a good jiu-jitsu. As a GM, you're focusing on all the departments, all the instructors, and all the students, as well as the back end stuff, the administration, the P&L, all that, the connection with the GMs, making sure you're in line with HQ, making sure the academy looks good, like so on and so forth. It's a massive bucket. Definitely the biggest bucket. But you have the most power, honestly, as a GM, I feel like, in that regard. So, and then the PD role, it goes into a different stage. Jordan and I hung out yesterday for a while. It's this whole, you're not really that accountable to people right now because it's like a PD. You're accountable to Alex, but there's no like metrics that we have to follow for program directors currently. And then you don't really have a lot of people that are accountable to you because you don't hire or fire staff. You consult on it, but you're not in charge of what DH gets hired or fired. You're not in charge of the GMs being accountable, right? So like you don't have a lot of oversight, but you also don't have a lot of executional power, and which is very different from a GM role. But you get to instill the vision, which has its own power in its way because people have to follow that vision. But like, how do you keep them accountable? Anyway, things we talked about yesterday. And I'm curious, going through those stages of the company from frontline employee to high-level leadership team, like running a whole program and everything in between. Has your view of the organization changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with every evolution that I've gone through with Easton, my perspective has expanded and evolved and changed as I go through it. And there's a lot there, and I'll probably monologue here for a second, but I'll try and go in chronological order here.
I have a lot of questions to ask, man, so don't take too long because there's some that I have to get to today that you're going to
Okay, all right, I'll try.
Got a lot of study.
So I think, Jordan. Awesome. Well, I think that, as a frontline employee, as a coach, going into a management position, a lot of what I see with frontline employees, and I was no different, was that because you're on the front lines, you're very able to a couple of things. One, like you're on the front lines, so you innovate a lot, right? Like because you're down there in the trenches with the members and the students, and you're teaching and all that stuff. But you also see a lot of the problems, like on the front lines, right? But as you move from the front lines to a manager role, your perspective expands. And even though there might be some problems with the systems or the curriculum on the front lines, you see from a more operational perspective that there's a bigger picture in play. And there's a lot of parts that you didn't understand. And you start to realize that like, oh, this ship isn't as tiny and as nimble as I thought it was. And with all of the day-to-day in our industry, trying to change the course of that ship can take some time, and it requires some patience, especially if you want to do it skillfully. And then when I moved from a manager position to, I guess we'll call it more of a director or executive position, well, like kind of the same thing happened, right? Where I realized like, oh man, this isn't just one school, like navigating the ocean of the martial arts industry. Like this is 8 schools, right? This is a much bigger, this is not a warship. This is a cruise liner. And, to get things to change direction or to shift culture, to implement systems, is a huge undertaking. So a lot of times I think on the front lines, you see like, these little problems and you want to implement solutions to these problems. And sometimes I would lose patience on like, why isn't this getting taken care of? Why isn't this getting done? And then you zoom up and then you realize there's a larger army to take care of. And then you zoom up even more and then like that army's even bigger, and it really changes your perspective. And you realize that, especially from where I'm sitting now, is that all of the schools, all of the fleet of ships, so to speak, they're all in different places, and one ship, the captain of that ship has a really good idea of what the needs are for that ship, right? But they may not be aware of what the needs are elsewhere. And so their priorities may not be what the priorities for the fleet need to be. So as I've worked my way through the ranks of the company, so to speak, that has been like the biggest perspective shift, is just realizing that the needs overall, how they take priority over like the smaller things that the people on the front lines may see.
I want to, I always think about that, how to become nimble, how do we, and people, we always want, I love the idea of decentralized command, and I've heard people like say that we're not even close to that. And then I've looked at other companies that I think we're wildly close to it. So it's all a matter of perspective, I think.
Yeah.
But I want to continue, like, how can we continue to be nimble? How can we pivot easily, and how can we make sure we can implement some of those changes for the front line? Because a lot of the stuff that we change comes from front line, and we try to like, oh, okay, so all these issues are collected patterns, and let's move them through the matrix of communication so we can create a solution for everyone. But also your point about the fleet of ships, like, I've been loving this show, Masters of Air, I think it's called, on TV Plus.
Yeah, I've been watching that too.
Oh,
I had to stop because I'm going to wait till it's all out, and then I'm going to binge the rest of it.
It's fantastic. But I keep thinking about like how, I've watched a lot of military shows and military books, and a lot, just because I think it's really interesting, especially World War II. But you think about how they coordinate, like the front, the tail, and the waist squadrons all have to play different roles, but they all have to follow the front one. And it's super interesting to see how they tie together. And like, there's always analogous metaphors you can take from it and put into business, and how we have to communicate and work together. So it just makes you think about that, and then how your view gets more elevated as you change positions. Because even last night when we were talking, you mentioned how like, I would get frustrated as a GM, like, why is this not getting changed yet? And then as a PD, you're like, oh, now I see why. Right? Yeah. And you even knew the difference from being a frontline staff to a GM, and you're like, why isn't this getting changed? And you still need to experience it at each level to understand that. And that was my point about the empathy piece, where like, it's really hard for me to be like, why isn't this working this way? And then I have to experience it to feel it. So it makes sense.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's why, our core value of trust is so important too. Like, I mean, we really have to trust our team, that they're doing their job. Something I learned from Phipps a while back. I remember I was hanging out with him in Thanksgiving, like a couple years ago. And he was talking about football, and he was like, football is the greatest team sport ever invented. And I was like, well, I've never played football, but I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you, but I would also like to hear why. Like, why is football the greatest team sport ever invented? And he's like, well, and he talked about that trust piece, how like on a football team, everybody has a job to do, and you absolutely have to trust your teammates to do their job. And even if your teammate is fucking up their job, you can't stop doing your job and go do theirs, because then you create a hole somewhere else, right? And then it fucks up the whole team. So that trust piece is like really important. And I think that's the point he was making, was that like, man, what other sport teaches you teamwork in that way? And that's something I think Phipps is really good at, right? Like, he's really good at staying in his lane and focusing on what's his job. And when he passes the ball, he doesn't mess with you. And for me, coming from my background, I'm used to wearing a lot of hats and doing a lot of things. And so my inclination is to like try and do all of the jobs, but like you said, as you zoom up, you change your perspective. And, I've realized more and more, it's more important for me to focus on doing my job. So that was a bit of a tangent there, but I think it's related.
I think it's important. I've been trying to push this, like the reminder of like excellence, trust, compassion, and stewardship. And
Right.
man,
Yeah.
this year, the more I think about what we're running, what we're missing in all of those core values, and I'm feeling pretty strongly about this, is adaptability,
Mm,
because that is one that I don't think is covered in those in those core values, and I think
interesting.
it will take a lot of the struggles we went into when like PDs trying to work with general managers or DHs not being able to whatever it is, right? But you put adaptability, like
Hmm.
all right, you got to be adaptable. Like you have to be adaptable. Like if we have to, because shit comes down all the time. And in jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, you have to be adaptable, right? You cannot just play your game.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, if somebody's better at your game, you're like, oh, I have to find another door in, right? And
Right.
I think that core value has been really resonating with me a lot. I know it's not in our core values, and I think we could probably excellence, compassion, trust, and stewardship. I do believe that adaptability is something that we have to start pushing because as we're trying to add more careers, and improve and always improving our martial arts, we have to be willing to adapt when new information comes. So something I think about
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. No, I think it comes. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead. I know you got questions you got to get to.
You can comment if you want.
Well, I was just gonna say, you know, I went on a tangent there, but I think the original point I was trying to make was just, yeah, that trust piece is really important. And I think what you say, like, I think the adaptability piece of this can be nested inside that trust core value. But, I think sometimes the core value can get so expansive, like the definition of it, that there might be like pieces of it that are not as clear. So I
Yeah,
totally understand your point.
it's like one of those ones I want to kind of shove down their throat. So let's make it its own standalone. You know, we can
Yeah,
find the
I
gray
hear
area
you.
where it fits in, but some people can't always find the gray area. So let's just remove the grayness and make it
Mhm.
black and white. What do you love most about teaching kids?
Got it. Oh gosh,
I got
what
some more like
don't
this, and
I
I gotta
love
be like,
about
oh, I
teaching?
gotta think about these.
Yeah, gosh, oh man. Let's see. I'm just gonna say whatever comes to my mind. Man, I love having fun with the kids. I think what I love most about it is seeing the progress with kids and how rewarding it is to see them grow as individuals. Um, it's like when I'm out and about uh, at competitions and training at other academies and stuff like that. Like, uh, I can turn on being social for sure, but my natural inclination is to be a little bit more introverted. But it's like anytime I run into the kids, like I love hanging out and talking with the kids. They're just different when they're younger. They haven't become like jaded by life. They're so pure. They're not trying to manipulate you. They're not trying to compete for anything. They're like, I mean, there's just none of the modern life stuff that adults deal with are there for the kids. And I think being a part of their journey is probably the most rewarding aspect in what I love about teaching the kids the most. Like, I mean, just seeing them come in as 5-year-olds who are timid and scared and they cry and get overwhelmed when they get taken down, and then years later to see them go from that to like being completely confident and the little savages on the mat that can take anybody down, or hearing the stories about how it's helped them at school or improving their schoolwork, or they find success in other sports, like the teenagers that I've been coaching for 4 years, like making varsity their freshman year of wrestling because they're so good at jiu-jitsu that they were able to use those skills. Like all of this stuff, man, it's so vast what I find rewarding about it. But if I had to sum it up in one thing, it's being a part of those journeys and seeing their progress. It's an honor. It's an honor to be a part of them, and I love coaching them for that reason.
I think it's important to point out, and I'll try not to cry. uh, I think it's important to point out with this, like how important it is to have, like people are parents are trusting their kids, they're trusting us with their children,
Yeah,
and for this reason, it's so important. I mean, across the board to have people coaching kids or adults with values, but with kids, like they're not jaded yet, and they can so easily be jaded by people they look up to, and
yeah,
it's imperative to have people that have like good values that
Mm-hmm.
will instill those in the kids. Like I think that
Yeah.
is so important that I think people don't always understand like the
Mm-hmm.
impact we have on the kids as teachers.
Yeah.
And because yeah, you watch the kids, they're gonna shape their lives kind of like as their coach, especially like in jujitsu. It's not like just a season. It's you're gonna or
Yeah.
Muay Thai. It's like they're there for years. You know, it's not like just 3 months
Yeah.
and then a different coach next month. It's this one coach for all this time. And if those coaches don't have like strong values and positive convictions about life, those kids can easily turn and be quickly jaded. And it's a really sad thing. And it happens a lot in our industry. And I'm really happy that we work so hard to filter for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I, man, I take it very seriously, the role that I am in as a kids coach, and I take very seriously the role that all of our coaches are in as a kids coach. If I've learned anything over the years, it's that the kids are watching everything you do because they're trying to learn how to be in this world.
Yeah.
And they're so much less likely to listen to anything you say, and they're going to copy what you do. There was an experience I had last year that really cemented this in my mind was, there's a student I coach. His name's Rowdy, and, I've been coaching him for like 3 or 4 years now. He's been at Easton Longmont for a long time. A lot of our staff know him. And I remember last year in a comp class, I was trying to give the comp class a pep talk, and I was trying to teach them about like never giving up in a match. Like it's not over till it's over. There could be 30 seconds left and you could be losing the match and you could still fight your way to victory. Like you can't give up. Do not accept defeat. Losing is okay, but being defeated is not something we're okay with. Right. And in the last tournament I did last year before I hurt my neck, I kind of had that experience where I was about to lose the match, but in the last 30 seconds, I was able to recover my guard and get a submission and win the match. And I knew Rowdy was watching that match. So in the class, when I'm giving them this pep talk, I'm like, Rowdy, like you watched me at my last tournament. What happened? Right. And he didn't remember a damn thing about the match. Like he didn't remember anything. He didn't remember my jujitsu. He didn't remember how I won. Nothing, right? What he said was he was like, "Oh, well, I just noticed at the end of the match, like you were really humble."
Aww.
Like he wasn't paying attention to my jujitsu at all. He was watching to see how I behaved. Did I celebrate and beat my chest and throw my gi top off, or did I just stand there and smile and thank my training partner and thank the coach, That was what he was paying attention to. And what I realized, I was like, man, he doesn't even care. He doesn't care if I win or lose. He just wants to see how I act. Right. And I think that was a very, very important lesson for me and one I want to share with everybody because, man, even if you're just an assistant coach on the mats, those kids are watching you. They're looking at you and they are learning, whether they realize it or not. They are absorbing a model of how they are supposed to be in this world.
Yeah. Beautiful. I have a lot more bigger picture questions, but we've already 20 minutes in and we've gotten through 3. But there's some I don't want to miss. So I'll try to jump around. Do you have like a solidified vision for the kids program? And I know we're probably jiu-jitsu, but I know I want to hear Matt's as well from Muay Thai.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how skillfully I can speak for Matt, but I think that the way that I could sum up the vision for the Easton Kids program is the foundation of Easton's future leaders and champions. And the idea behind that is, like we don't know which kids are going to start at 4 years old and train with us forever and never quit and become black belt world champions one day, those kids are really rare. But I think the important thing to remember is that whether they become a champion with Easton or not, we can teach them to become a champion anywhere in their life, right? Like I always tell the kids that the the best thing about jiu-jitsu is not learning how to fight or how to defend yourself. It's that if you can learn to find success in jiu-jitsu, then you have the cheat codes for life, right? You can use jiu-jitsu as an analogy for anything in life. I have yet to find something that I can't use it as a blueprint for success for. And if there is something, then maybe I just don't understand jiu-jitsu well enough yet, right? Like every day I'm learning jiu-jitsu on a deeper level, and I'm understanding life a little bit more skillfully as a byproduct. And I think that's the best part of it, is it gives the kids the cheat codes for life. And I think that's the vision for the program, right? Is whether they become a world champion or not, we're giving them a blueprint for success anywhere else in their life. And then as part of the organization, as we grow and expand as an organization and we seek to expand our impact, on the world, having kids grow up and train in our program and in our culture is going to teach them to be the kind of leaders that we want to see to expand our positive impact, out there in the community.
Beautiful. What about, how is it working with Maddie Bloss and the kids Muay Thai? Like, I know you don't do Muay Thai. Because we have more jiu-jitsu schools than Muay Thai schools, the lead of the program is a jiu-jitsu guy. But that's just because of how we started and how it expanded. So what are your thoughts there? What is it like working with Maddie, who's also a GM in Boulder and does a great job with the kids Muay Thai program?
Yeah, well, I'm a huge Bloss Boss fan. I've loved Matty for a long time, and I love working with him in this capacity. I loved working with him on the GM team, and I love working with him, as a colleague on the PD team as well. I think that, the kids program vision is one and the same in terms of what we want to do for the students and what we want to achieve. The vehicle is just slightly different because jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai are different martial arts, right? Same destination, different vehicles. So, working with Maddie, the way that I try to be of service for kids Muay Thai is really to help Maddie with the infrastructure and the systems that will help him do his job more effectively. Because, I spoke a little bit about this earlier, like wearing both hats, GM and PD hat, is quite difficult. And I'm always impressed with Maddie's ability to balance the two. He is far superior than I in that regard, right? But one thing that can be challenging is because there's so much day to day in the GM role, trying to find the time to work on the projects that really improve the systems and help us move the needle in terms of scaling and achieving our collective vision can be challenging. So what I try to do is really lend that support to him in building the systems. Like, eventually we're going to have a staff development pipeline for every program at Easton. But some of our staff may be familiar with it already because Kids Muay Thai was the first iteration of that we launched kind of as a beta test to see how it would go and collect information. So supporting him with systems and infrastructure like that has been my primary approach to working with Maddie.
Beautiful. How important is competition for kids?
How important is competition for kids? Man, my opinion on this evolves all the time. So one, I want to say, like, competition is not required for any student at Easton, right? Any student can do jiu-jitsu, kid or adult, and make it all the way to black belt without ever competing, right? It is not the way that I personally want to do jiu-jitsu, right? Like I want to go out there and I want to compete. I want to challenge myself. And I believe that competition is a byproduct of loving jiu-jitsu so much, because I think part of loving jiu-jitsu is loving the journey. And if you love the journey and you want to be on the path, then that means you are challenging yourself. You are not winning all the time. You are facing adversity and you are growing from those challenges. So I believe that part of what our program aims to do for the kids, right, to develop future champions and leaders, regardless of what aspect of life they're going into. I think that them signing up for challenges is an important part of that process. Not required, right? Like for some kids coming to jiu-jitsu class, that is plenty enough challenge for them. But for some of our students, they want more, right? They really want more. And I think that our competition program affords them those opportunities. Now, I'll say this. I think having a robust, thriving competition program is really important for having a high quality class in the academy on the mats, right? Imagine a world where none of our kids ever competed. I think that could be a path to a McDojo, right? Where we don't have battle tested jujitsu. We don't maintain the integrity of our martial art. We don't grow. We don't evolve. We don't stay on the cutting edge, and we don't achieve our vision. So I think it's always going to be a smaller percentage of the students. Like, I don't ever think it's going to be a majority of the kid students that compete. I think it's always going to be a minority of them. But I think it's a holistic approach. By having those killers in the room who are battle tested, who can go out there and compete with the best of the best in the world, they are going to elevate the base level of jiu-jitsu in the room, right? Like, I see 3 and 4 stripe white belts all the times busting out De La Hiva side sweeps and Bebe Bolo back takes, like this high level stuff that we typically don't see in adults till like, skilled blue belts or purple belts, because they train with killers. They train with those killers who are going out there as the tip of the spear, and battle testing and challenging themselves. And that high level of skill in jiu-jitsu percolates down to the base level, and it creates a rising tide that lifts all boats. And I think that's really important. Furthermore, I think that being part of a team, learning to be part of a team and having that experience of working towards a common goal and finding success on a team is one of the peak experiences of life, right? Like, some of my most profound core memories as a human are when I had the opportunity to be on a team and achieve something together. And I think that the kids need that. And jiu-jitsu has a minor disadvantage there because it's kind of like it's easy to see it as an individual sport, right? Like, I'm going out there, I'm having a match, it's all about me, it's my show. Well, the thing that I like about the kids competing is that anytime the kids come back and they have success from a competition, and look, success in a competition does not mean necessarily like winning a team trophy or winning medals, right? Getting out there and competing, right, is a success in itself. And anytime you have kids come back from a tournament who are successful, regardless of their results, there's an opportunity to build the team culture in the classroom, right? Because what that person has to understand, especially if they got a gold medal or a team trophy, is like, look, you didn't win that gold medal because you were in your bedroom watching YouTube videos doing solo drills on the floor, right? Like, you won that gold medal because you have a team of kids. You have 40 kids that show up every day and train their butt off with you, and they challenge you and they make you better. And then you show up for them and they show up for you, and everybody gets taken care of. And that rising tide is why you found that success. And when we realize that, those kids who go out there and compete can build the cohesiveness of the team culture and the community in the class on the mats. And I think that is of vital importance for the kids to remember that we can always go further together than we can on our own. And if we didn't have the competition program as a tool, as a vehicle to help us highlight and teach the kids that, I don't think our classes would be as strong as they are.
Oh, beautiful. I agree with everything you said. I want to add something on just because I feel like it's important people understand this, or 2 things that I've always thought about as a parent and as a coach. One is competition can help burnout, right? Like, if you're a kid, like, if you have something that you're performing for, you get ready for the competition and then you compete at it. And then you feel like, oh, I just did the big show. And then you can have like a week of relaxing, or maybe take a season off, whatever you need. But it can prevent burnout to, like, you're working towards a goal. Like, for me, like, I realized, I think like a year and a half ago, I was like lost with my like physical activity. I couldn't figure out what it was, and it was because I wasn't competing for anything. So I was like, I'm going to sign up for an ultra marathon. And then I was like, all of a sudden my whole life shifted. Everything, my health, my mind, because I had to re-gauge everything for that ultra marathon, right? And what happened was I did that for an entire year. Took a year off jiu-jitsu to fix my neck. And now this year I'm signing up for competitions for jiu-jitsu, and it's been 10 years. I'm like, because now I'm like, I'm going to sign up for a competition. And when I do that, for me, it motivates to get me on the mat. So like, I'll get on the mat and train now consistently because I have a competition coming up, and the competition helps prevent burnout. It also helps motivate you sometimes, or instill discipline in your work, because you have a plan in place for that big show. It's like if you're going to be in a play, you need to practice or you're going to shit the bed on stage, right? So if I'm going to be competing,
right.
If I don't practice for it, I'm going to shit the bed. And that's just awful. I don't want to be that person. So it creates this discipline. That's one aspect. The other aspect is, this is something that Ian told me a long time ago, and I fully agree with this. If you are in jiu-jitsu for self-defense, if your kid's in jiu-jitsu because of bullying, whatever reason, you can be on the mat and be scared, right? But after a few times you're with your friends, it's fine. But when a stranger comes up to you, there's an adrenaline dump, whether it's a bully, whether it's a group of kids, whether it's a stranger on the street. If you've competed, you know what that adrenaline dump feels like, right? So you can work with it in that moment versus just freeze up. So that fight or flight will turn into like a more malleable thing that you can work with versus just like, these are my two options. And competition helps you with that fight or flight response and how to understand it and know it's coming when that stranger approaches you on the street. So for me, it's like burnout instills discipline and self-defense. So you don't have to want to compete, but if you're here for self-defense and care about your safety, you should do it to understand it. And I agree with everything you said. Like, not everybody competes. We're not a competition school, but it does make us a good school because of the battle tested martial arts.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
Let's see. Let's pivot to a more generalized questions here that I'm really excited about. What does your life look like outside of Easton?
What does my life look like outside of Easton?
Yeah.
Oh man, what is that? Oh dude, I feel like a monk sometimes. Man, what does my life look like outside of Easton? Well, on my off days, on my rest days, relaxing. I like to hang out with my dog. We got a new dog earlier this year. His name's Hatchet. He's great. I play video games on my computer.
Tell everybody the pet names that you have for your animals, just so they understand.
Oh yeah, so I have 2 cats and a dog. My cat's names are Blowtorch, Chainsaw, and my dog's name is Hatchet.
I think it's important people understand the theme.
Yeah, there's a theme. So I want to add a crowbar to this family, but we're limits. But anyway, yeah, machete's also been on the table. Hammer, lots of different ideas, but yeah. So, man, I play video games. I read a lot. I watch movies. I go lift weights. I ride my Peloton bike. Yeah, there's not. This makes me sound really lame and boring, but man, outside of jiu-jitsu and Easton, yeah, it's just like kind of the simple pleasures of life that I enjoy, and I like living that way. There's not a whole lot else that I do other than. Yeah, I don't know. This is bad. This is a bad question.
It's a great question. It's common for me. What do I read? I meditate. I exercise, and then I hang out with my family and kids. Those are
that's pretty much it.
It's my goals in life. Like,
right.
I want to make sure that I'm filling my buckets, and this will lead into other questions. Before I pivot to the next question, two questions. What are you reading right now? And what books do you what book or books or author, choose whichever one you want, do you recommend everybody should read in their life?
Right now, I am reading the Elon Musk biography by Walter Isaacson. And I think that an author that I would recommend everybody read is Ryan Holiday.
Well, I've read the Elon Musk biography, so I enjoy it. I love all Walter Isaacson stuff. And I've read all of Ryan Holiday stuff. So
yeah,
we're on the same page.
I'll throw this one in there. Yeah, Ryan Holiday is pretty common, but I'll throw another one out there, especially for any professional that needs to get project work done. I'm a big fan of Cal Newport as well. Yeah, I really like his books.
My go-to for every single person that before they do anything is Carol Dweck's mindset. Before you start your life,
Right.
read Mindset, because it shows you, that
Yeah.
book tells you can understand and do anything. And until I read that book,
Yeah.
everything I read, I would have been like, I'm too stupid to do this. And then I read that, I'm like, I can do this. And it's completely changed my life.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I have had that book on my shelf. I'm looking at it right now for so many years. And I'm always like, I'm going to read that next. And then whenever I finish a book, there's another book that like pulls my focus. And I'm like, no, I want to read this first. And so I perpetually never get to it. But I have got to read it because, I mean, even in like the last 2 weeks, like you're like the third person to bring that up. So
Alex is on a
I got to
read
cross
right
that off
now,
the list.
so that's probably why.
Wow. Okay. That makes sense.
Okay. I'm going to ask this one a little bit later. If there were 3 living people you could have dinner with, who would they be?
3 living people.
Yeah, and it can't be like your wife or someone that you know.
All right, let's see. I'm going to go with 3 living people. Christopher Nolan. I'd like to have dinner with him. Let's say Bill Gates.
Christopher Nolan, everybody, the director of Batman and right, The Dark Knight and all those series.
Oh yeah, well, you know,
just everybody knows who Christopher Nolan is.
Everybody should know who Christopher Nolan is.
I agree.
Come on.
I just thought Bill Gates is obvious, so I figured.
Yeah. And then third one, Tynan Dalpra.
Who's that one?
He's black belt world champion, AOJ athlete. He's the kids coach for the AOJ kids. He's probably my favorite performing martial artist right now. But yeah, so let's go with that. Christopher Nolan, Bill Gates, Tynan Dalpra. Yeah, that'll work.
I love that. For me, I had to think about the categories I wanted to explore. And then I was like, okay, now choose in those individuals. Interesting. All right. There's one on here that I think you're going to love, but I'll wait for a minute. Would you rather be rich or would you rather be famous?
Rich.
Why?
I think being famous sucks.
I agree. I'd rather be rich too, because I can do a lot more with money. And it's not about the money or the material, like buying yachts. It's about like the freedom to focus on what I want to do all the time. And
I think early on in my life when I was becoming an actor or training to be an actor, I guess, I think rich and famous might have been synonymous for me. But as I've gone through my life and have experienced like microcosms of fame, and that sounds like bullshit, but like, I mean, I guess microcosms of like where you are known within a community, like you're a big fish in a small pond kind of thing. The older I get, the more I like just crave anonymity, like I would like to be able to just do my thing and nobody know who I am. And then I think everybody in this day and age, like anybody can be famous now for like absolutely no reason. So it's like this highly sought after thing. But I think every abundance creates a new scarcity. And I find myself craving that scarcity.
Yeah. There's always the problem with being rich too. Like it all scales up, right? And you got to be careful. Like, you know how it scales.
Yeah.
What is a perfect day for you?
A perfect day for me would be one in which I get up on time after a great night of sleep. I get to train. So that would mean like I get to lift weights. I get to do jiu-jitsu, ideally drilling and studying a little bit of jiu-jitsu before that training, because that's my favorite way to go about it. And then I would love to have a highly productive afternoon after like a solid morning so in the morning, I always want to journal and read every morning. And then after that, I would love to lift weights and do jiu-jitsu. And then being productive makes me feel really, really good. So having a nice long chunk of time to sit down and focus and be creative and get work done, I always feel really good after that happens. And then, man, because I love coaching kids so much, being able to teach a kids class, like a bomb kids class where you feel like you hit a home run, where everything is just on point. And yeah, and then coming home and being able to hang with my lady and my dog and my pets and my family, and relax. Yeah, I think that's like a perfect day. So, and I'm great, and I'm very fortunate to where, like, I'll say this, man, I have a lot of perfect days these days.
Yeah, it's
I
amazing.
have a lot of perfect days.
When we point at where we want to go, how we can get there, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit. And you look back at like what your life was previously, and then all of a sudden you manifested your destiny because you kind of put the work into the buckets you need to put them into to get you to that spot.
Yeah.
And it's like you all of a sudden you look around and you're like, what can I be mad about? Like this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
There's going to be struggles in life that has to happen, but this is what I want my life to be.
Yeah. There's many days now where, and it's not every day, but in this era of my life, it's the most I would ever feel like this, is where, like, sometimes at the end of the day, I'm like, man, I would do today again. Like, I wouldn't change a thing, and I could just rewind the day and just do it again and have a blast. So, and I'm very grateful for that.
I love it. If you could wake up tomorrow and gain one quality or ability, what would it be?
Oh.
I know you're into superheroes, so I was excited for this question.
Yeah, I would gain the ability to, I want the ability. Yeah, I think the ability to like stop time, right? Like I would love to be able to, in Dragon Ball Z, there's this hyperbolic time chamber where like they can go spend a year in the time chamber and it's only been a day in the real world and they come out like Super Saiyans. So I always like wish I could just freeze life, go into my hyperbolic time chamber and accomplish whatever I want to accomplish and then come back to the world like completely like brand new and advanced and, gained a whole new skill set and stuff like that. So I don't know why that came to mind. You asked me on a different day and I would be like, I don't know, adamantium claws.
I was going to say, like, that's a very thoughtful answer. Like, your answers have been quite thoughtful and not like, I'll fly. It's been pretty well, I'd probably
it just depends where I'm at in any given day. I mean, it would be cool. Like, I wish I could like freeze time before every tournament and like build all my skills to the point that I wanted. I wish I could freeze time and like get all the projects done that I wanted, like read all the books that I want to read. And all kinds of, more time. That would be amazing, just to be able to create time for myself.
All right. I got a few more, and then I have some closing questions that I want to ask.
Sure.
This is going pretty rapid fire. This one I just found, and I like it. Do you have a secret hunch of how you will die?
A secret hunch of how I will die? Oh my God. I've never thought about this.
Me neither. I just saw it and I was like, I'm going to ask this one. This comes from a list called the 36 Questions to Fall in Love. It's a pretty famous list. I heard on Econ Talk with Charles Duhigg and Russ Roberts, because Charles Duhigg just released a new book, and I've read all his books, and his new book's about connection and how to connect. And this is a famous list that people use. And there's a whole story and study behind it, and I've been like really into the list. I'll send it to you when I'm done. Yeah,
I don't have a secret hunch of how I will die. There's a lot of ways I'm trying to avoid dying. So I've never thought about that. No, I don't.
Me neither. If you think of it, let me know. I'm curious.
I will. Yeah. No.
It's an odd question. I just popped up. I was like, well, I want to try this one. All right, back to the other two that I had for you. That, let's this one. This has been my favorite one recently, and I know you read Ryan Holiday, and I know this is a common thing he talks about often, but not just Ryan Holiday. I think Robert Greene does, and it's from other people, right? But we'll use him as the reference. But I've thought about this question a lot, and I've been posing it to a lot of people that like reach out and, hey, man, what should I be working on with that? I'm like, well, let's start here. What does your life look like at 65? And like
What does my life look like at 65?
a day or an hour. And I like for me, I paint a picture of a table. You know what that looks like. That's my
Yeah,
holiday thing.
man. Well, I hope
The perfect
what I
end of the
envision
day.
at
At the end, what does it look like? You know, what is?
yeah. Well, I hope I'm retired at 65. And so I hope I'm filling my, I mean, I want to be doing jujitsu when I'm 65. And I'm trying to do a lot of things now to ensure that happens. Um, I hope at that point in my life, my kids are around their early 20s. Like, don't have kids yet, but working on it. So I hope at that point in my life that I'm still able to do the things that mean a lot to me now, which are to practice martial arts, to be able to read and study. But then also at that point, I hope that I'm retired and I have the free time to be able to spend time with my future kids and whatever that is. Um, I in my early 20s, there were things that I wanted to be able to do with my parents, like go rock climbing and stuff like that. And they just weren't physically able at that point. And so, my goal in my 60s is to be healthy and vibrant and strong enough to where when my kids, hit this adventurous stage of their life where they want to go and experience the world and do all these things, if they want to invite me along with, I'm able to partake in that. So I think that's really prescient on my mind right now, and I think that's going to be really important to me when I'm in my 60s, is to be able to do all those things.
Yeah, yeah, very similar descriptions for me. Let's move to our closing questions here.
Okay.
We talked about this already. You've already given me some of this stuff, but since we're on the spot, any feedback for me?
Oh man, not anything new that I haven't said already recently in our like feedback process and stuff like that. Um, so I don't know if you want me to say that again, but should I?
Sure, why not?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, no, I think, man, I think that, coming back to the big ship metaphor, the big fleet of ships, I think sometimes implementing new systems and shifting the culture is very difficult. And I know that you've empowered a lot of people within the company to be able to do that on their own. But I think that a lot of times to shift the culture, you kind of have to shift people's habits as well. And I think when you shift people's habits, there's going to be this period of resistance. And it may not even be willful resistance. It's just once people are programmed to do things a certain way, it can be really hard to shift. And I think that one thing that you are really skilled at, and I know that a lot of people in the company draw a lot of confidence from you, is, just holding the line when it comes time to shift that culture. So sometimes when we need to implement new systems and ideas to improve the company and, more skillfully achieve our collective vision, I know some of us have a hard time doing it unless you step up behind us and like drop the hammer, so to speak. So yeah, that's my feedback.
Yeah.
And that was a more expansive version of what I wrote on the spreadsheet, but same
No,
thing.
I get it. I think that was beautiful. That was really well said. And I think just so everybody who is listening, that the goal is to not have to be that person. And I think it's obviously a weakness on my part that that's still the way it is, but I'm working on it and just can keep working on it, but I do appreciate that. As I always say in these podcasts, like, please keep it coming.
Mm-hmm.
The only way, we can be very self-aware of who we are and our faults. And so I don't have people tell me these days that I'm angry or, I'm unpredictable or I freak out, because I'm much more aware of that than anybody else. So nobody's going to tell me that. I'm like, I know, I tell you every day. So I don't hear that feedback. Not that I'm still not
Right.
that sometimes, but
Yeah.
this other stuff is super productive too, because it actually points to areas I can focus on in the company and where I'm missing there, trying to keep my language positive, as my therapist says.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to jump to the last one.
Yeah.
So this is just a nice closing statement. For what in your life do you feel most grateful? And it doesn't have to be one thing.
For what in my life do I feel most grateful? Elizabeth.
Good answer. Great answer. Elizabeth is his partner, in case anybody didn't know. Beautiful man. Any closing thoughts, Jordan?
No, man, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting me on the Easton Staff Podcast.
It's now Easton Community Podcast. Phipps had me change.
Oh, Easton Community Podcast. Guys, so this isn't for the staff anymore. This is for like the entire community.
Yeah. We moved more towards community just because we have a lot of community members on it, like Jason Anton and Reed Delman, and there'll be a bunch more guests coming up. They don't know yet, but I'm going to ask a bunch of guests to be on the podcast as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
No, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Man,
I would like to be on again someday.
Yeah, well, I think we have another Easton Online coming up too, so that'll be concurrently also. Jordan, thank you so much for your time. As always, it's a pleasure. I'll see you soon, buddy.
Thank you so much.